Jungle. Ah ha ha ha! Audio Jungle.
How about that crab rave, baby? Alright, anyway, this is Dave with Blue Bears Games. In this week's video, we are doing Blues Brews. I've been putting this off because every single time a new set comes out or is spoiled, there's always a card that can go into it, and that's the big issue with 5-color decks, but this week is a 5-color deck. I'm pulling the trigger. I'm saying I'll just update it later and do a video on it then. For now, we're doing Golos Tireless Pilgrim. And my build is a lands build, not landfall, lands. I'll explain everything as we go. It's very similar to a lot of the decks out there. Golos is one of the more popular commanders just because he's 5-color, he's versatile, he can do a lot of things. So let's get into it. Who's Golos? If you don't know, you really need to. 5 colorless. He is just colorless, but his color identity is 5 colors. His ability shows 5 colors, mana symbols on the card that makes him a 5-color commander. When he enters the battlefield, search your library for a land, put a land card, any land, doesn't matter if it's basic, it can be non-basic, it could be anything, as long as it says land. Front cards only. I know that there's some questions out there about the new cards that are one side a card, one side of a land. The front card matters here. You cannot search for anything that is not in your hand on the back side. It can only be the front side. So search for a land and put it onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle your library. Sounds simple. Then you get to the ability. 5 color plus 2 colon, meaning you can do it as much as you want as long as you have the mana, and we're going to have it here. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn without paying their mana cost. So 3 cards for free. Now, what that means is lands. You can only play 1 land a turn. I solved that here. Any other spell, it seems to be the timing comes into play here. So you can't play a sorcery on somebody else's turn, so you got to be careful with him not to use it on any other person's turn unless you're confident that you're not going to flip over anything that can't be played. So, let's get into the deck. I'm actually happy with this deck. I have a throttled down version. I'm going to go over the lands first. This is a throttled down version. What I mean by that is, I did not make it super duper powerful. I made this fun. There is one goal in mind here. One goal and one goal only. Getting lands into play. Specific lands. And let me zoom out here and I'll go over the lands that I have in here. So, we start off as a 5-color deck. We're going to need a command tower. It's almost definite. And then we're going to do this in waves because they're all pretty much the same. I have a full boat of the triomes. So each triome that exists, I have a full boat because they are land type, and we're going to be searching for a lot of lands, and land types help. And I need the color fixing. So we're going to start off with that. So the full boat of triomes. Our next one is going to be the full boat of, and I'm not sure you're going to be able to see all 10 of them, Shocklands. It's all 10 Shocklands. So we're going to go Sacred Foundry, Overgrown Tomb, Blood Crypt, Steam Vents, Hollowed Fountain, Watery Grave, Godless Shrine, Breeding Pool, Temple Garden, and Stomping Ground. So it's a full boat of that. And then the actual win of this deck we're looking to do comes from the next section. We're going to do a full boat of the Guild Gates, and I'm just not going to fan them because that's just not going to work. Alright, so, and they're all foil except for one. The Dimir Guildgate, Gruul Guildgate, Orzhov, Simic, Selesnya, Golgari, Izzet, Rakdos, Boros, and Azorius. Every Guildgate, because this is our win con. I have all 10 gates in here because we are looking to Maze's End this shit and get out of there. Alright? So, all 10 gates. We're going to go further. I added an 11th gate because sometimes shit happens and you need the extra one. So, Gateway Plaza is in here solely just because I wanted to make sure that if one gate for some reason is exiled in some way, shape, or form and I can't get it back, You gotta have an extra. So there's that. The win con. Normally I go over the win cons at the end of the video. I'm going to spread this one out a little bit and do a couple at the end and one right now. This is the main point of this deck, Maze's End. Enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap that at Golos. It's not what that's going to do. Then you can pay 3, tap it, return it to its owner's hand. Search your library for a gate card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. If you control 10 or more gates with different names, you win the game. I've been trying to make this deck since Dragon's Maze was spoiled. This was spoiled. I knew I wanted to try this deck, and what better opportunity than now? So, realize you don't actually have to have, like, you can actually have all 10 in play and activate this and you win the game. You don't actually have to go search for a gate, put it into play to win the game. Keep that in mind. We're 5 colors, so I got more stuff in here. We've got, now I might switch this out to this new Snowlands. I'm not sure. It depends on how it plays out in real time. I've been fishbowl testing the hell out of this deck to see if the lands come up right and everything, and so far it seems okay. So it's the Amonkhet lands. They all come into play tap, but they all cycle. So I have a play set of those in there for the 5 that exist. I was going to go ahead and switch in the new snow duels that came with Kaldheim, but unfortunately the cycling beat out the fact that it's a snow land. It just, you know, they were rare, so I was like, oh, well, if they're common for the Kaldheim ones, I can just go get them and put them in, but why? You know, I've already got them in here. Plaza of Harmony, this made... Okay, so the card I'm looking for from Kaldheim that I haven't opened yet is the World Tree. This is coming out for the World Tree. That's one of the updates that will be coming. Reliquary Tower, because trust me, his deck's going to get a lot of cards in hand. Strip Mine to take care of people's problem stuff. And similar to my Muldrotha deck, where I have the ability to do a little bit of targeted land destruction, this deck will be able to use it as well with the Strip Mine. Thespian Stage, because you just never know what's on the field that you might want to copy. The most important land in this deck is Field of the Dead, because there's not a single land in this deck has a similar, an identical name at all. Field of the Dead does some work here. In fact, usually when I'm fishbowling this deck and I see the way it works out, it's usually when I get Golos in play, Field of the Dead is the card I go search for, 99% of the time. So this card puts in a lot of work. There's a reason why it went from when I acquired this in a trade for $7, it's now like $22, because it does work. And Glacial Chasm, because again, I'm going to be able to get this back, so if I can make it so I can live longer and not take damage, I'm going to make sure I do that. So, Glacial Chasm is the last land that I have in here for now. Next up is Ramp, and it's not really Ramp so much as the entire deck. This is my Ramp section. This is the biggest Ramp section I've ever had in one of these decks. We have to have a Soul Ring because, well, why not? And our commander is colorless, so that helps. That Soul Ring really does work here. An Arcane Signet because we're a 5-color deck. Chromatic Lantern, again, because we're a 5-color deck, and it makes it so that your lands tap for whatever you want. This seems like an odd inclusion. It's not. Gem of Becoming is actually going to do a lot of work in this deck, especially if you can get it back. So it's a 3 cast, 3 and tap. Go search for an island, a swamp, and a mountain. Not or. These are N. You can get 3 lands in your hand out of this card. Excuse me. Open the gates, because we're looking for our gates. Animus Awakening. Again, this is going to be a look at all these cards in the back. There's a lot of ramp here, so I'm just going to go through these. Tithe, because why not? Gate Creeper Vine, because we're still looking for those gate cards. That's our main focal point of this deck. Sylvan Scrying, so you'll be able to go get anything you want. May switch this out. I did not put 3 visits in now that I have them. I may switch this out for 3 visits. I don't know yet. Depends on how it plays out in real life. Nylea's Intervention. District Guide. And Spoils of Victory, because it lets you go search for anything but a forest. And then Realms Uncharted. And a lot of these things may seem out of place or weird because I'm going to end up chucking land into the graveyard. But trust me, there's ways to get it all back. So Realms Uncharted lets me go get 4. My opponent chooses 2. I put them into my hand and the other in my graveyard. Circuitous Route, again, looking for gates again. Shard Convergence. This one lets me go get a Plains, an Island, a Swamp, and a Mountain card, and put them into my hand. That's 4 lands right there, and everything here has a type except for a couple things. Tempt with Discovery. Trust me, when that gets played, people, when they realize what deck they're playing against, they usually don't take it. Pier's Whim. Most of the time, you're going to choose foe for everybody but yourself. Scape Shift, because we're going to do I think it was 2 years ago, the Scape Shift and the artifact that brings lands back deck was quite popular with Field of the Dead. That's kind of in here. And then Reshape the Earth, because why wouldn't I want to be able to go search for 10 specific lands and then win the game? So those are the ramp cards that I have in here, or the land searchers. Next section is going to deal with the lands themselves specifically and putting them into play. And the reason why this is going to be like this, I have as many of these cards in here as possible, because when you go ahead and use Golos' ability and you flip lands, you want to be able to play them and not have to just keep them exiled. So we're going to go with Exploration. Burgeoning, because if you do happen to activate on somebody else's turn, you can activate in response, and if you flip a land, you can play it because your opponent played one. Azusa. Dryad of the Elysian Grove. I don't know. Dryad of the Elysian. You know what? It's the Dryad. Wayward Swordtooth. This is a hidden little gem here. You don't care it's a 5/5, but you like the fact that it's got a big ass, and that big ass will keep it alive longer. You can play an additional land, and it gives you the City's Blessing if you care. Courser of Krufix. Rada, Heart of Keld. This is one of those ones where I may take it out depending on what gets printed or what I pull from boxes or trade for in future. This is one of those ones that's on the fence. Oracle of Moldaya, certainly not on the fence. This is one of the better cards in here. Mina and Den, Wildborn. Again, this one's on the fence. I'm not sure it's going to stay on the fence, though. Its ability to play an additional land is what I need. So, the Katrog Monster, because, again, you can play an additional land, and if you have 8 cards in your hand at the beginning of your end step and you keep discarding a land, you can actually infinitely draw your deck, but there's not enough lands in here to do it. The deck is not set up for that combo, but it is an option for later. A new addition from the Commander Legends Precons. AC, Tyrant of the Gyre Strait. Basically, it is, I believe, on steroids. It is Tatiova. It does her ability plus, so I had to add it in there. For a Precon Commander card, it's actually pricey too. I'm not sure why. Life from the Loam, so I can get lands back. You can return up to 3 lands, and you can dredge, so you can actually bring this back to your hand if you want to. It's to help so that you can get your stuff back. This next couple cards are going to be all about getting your lands back. Crucible of the Worlds, again, goes with the Scape Shift. This way, when you're doing stuff like using Strip Mine to kill other people's lands, somebody kills one of your lands for some reason, because almost everything you have is non-basic, so there's a lot more stuff to kill non-basics than there is to kill basics. It's a way to get them back. I did not put in here the big green from... what was it? It's not Ashaya, the other one. I don't know. I'll put it up there. I didn't put the other one in here because I didn't like the way it looked. Oh, I'm sorry. I did. Ramanoop Excavator. You may play land cards from your graveyard, so all this stuff is to get it all back. And then Ancient Green Warden is the one I was just talking about. I forgot I did put it in here because I finally got one. Ancient Green Warden. So it's got reach, and you may play cards from your graveyard. It's a 5/7. It's only 6 to cast. And if a land entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability on a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. That plays well with Field of the Dead. So that's the stuff that deals with lands. It's not horrible as far as the amount of stuff that you have that can do that. Now the next section, usually I have set sections that are always the same. This deck is a little different. Usually I go creatures. No creatures here. The creatures here are utility only. Everything in this deck is utility. This section is the searching section for utility. Worldly Tutor. And here's what's funny. So the 3 tutors from, I believe it was Visions that they all came in, and then reprinted in 6th. They all put the card on top of your library, which plays really great with Golos because you can just flip them all over and play them. So Worldly Tutor searches for a creature. Mystical Tutor searches for an instant or a sorcery. And Enlightened Tutor searches for an artifact or an enchantment. So you've got that pretty well covered here. That's pretty good coverage. Actually, right before this video, I pulled out a Time of Need and replaced it with Search for Glory because I got it in the last box that I just had up. So it searches for a snow permanent, which at one point in time I was going to switch in the snow lands for the Amonkhet lands. That would have made a difference. Then a legendary card or a saga. Now, I don't really care about the saga card. I don't think I have any in here, and I don't think I ever will. However, Time of Need was in there to search for a legendary creature, and Search for Glory searches for a legendary card. And I'm planning on bringing in the World Tree, which I believe is a legendary land, and if it's not, it should be. This helps me go get more stuff than Time of Need did, so it made the switch. Right before the video, by the way. Eldamri's Call, search for a creature. Idyllic Tutor, go search for an enchantment. Grim Tutor, and I understand that I'm going to hear, well, why didn't you use Demonic Tutor? Why didn't you use Vampire Tutor? Because there's only so many, I have so many decks that I only have so many of each version of a card. I wish I had more Demonic Tutors. I wish I had more Vampire Tutors. I only have the 2 Vamp Tutors, and I only have like 5 Demonic Tutors. And I know that sounds like a lot. Let me tell you, when you're trying to build the 32 deck challenge or the wheel or whatever you want to call it, tutors, especially in black, go quickly. So Grim Tutor it is. And Conflux, because it lets you go get a lot of things. And imagine flipping this for Golos' ability. Remember, keep that in mind when you look at this deck. When you can flip things for free and play them, Conflux becomes a really good card. It looks expensive, but if you can flip it off a Golos activation, you're talking 5 cards for free. I mean, that's really good. So that's the tutor section of this. The rest of it's going to be utility that's non-spell, per se. I guess it's artifacts and enchantments that are utility. So I went on the cheaper side of this. I didn't want to put in, I guess you could say, lately, $10,000 worth of dual lands, because apparently they jumped in price. I wanted this deck to be a little slower on purpose because it has so many things it can do that a lot of people just can't stop. So, all the lands come into play tapped, except for a couple. You may have noticed that, and that may be the first thing you're like, well, everything comes into play tapped. That was on purpose. Completely on purpose. I wanted this deck to be a little slower because it's not fair. If I had a set of duels, like OG duels, then a set of shock lands, and then a set of the what are they? The gates, and then a Field of the Dead. I mean, that's not really fair. I mean, I know that that's what people like. They're like, oh, well, you're just here to play to win. No, I like my friends. So, to fix that, I added Amulet of Vigor so that everything comes into play tapped, untaps. Swiftfoot Boots to help protect Golos. Horn of Greed is on the fence because there are some things about this card I don't like. So, it says whenever a player plays a land, that player draws a card. It does not trigger on anything that puts lands into play. So, if you have things out there that let you play additional lands and you have a Golos trigger, it works. But as far as land searchers, it doesn't trigger it. So, I'm not really sure. I'm on the fence and I'll keep testing it. This is technically a ramp card, but it's not. It's actually a utility card. It is 7 to cast, so obviously it can't be ramp, but it can be used for ramp if you get it off a Golos activation, which by then you should have 7 mana anyway. But it taps to add 5, and then you can draw a card for each color among permanents you control, and this is a 5-color deck, so you should be able to do it. Let's see. Wilderness Reclamation, another card on the fence. More testing is needed. I don't really care about being able to untap the lands once. I want to be able to untap the lands all the time, so I added Seedborn Muse. So, Wilderness Reclamation has room to move out, so to speak. So, I want Seedborn Muse style effects. I don't want Awakening. I don't want other people untapping. I just want to untap myself. Zendikar's Royal. Anybody who says, oh, why didn't you just use Felidar Retreat? It's the same thing for cheaper. There's an actual reason, and I'll get to that in a second. There is another little thing in here that synergizes with Zendikar's Royal in case I want to go that route for my winning. So, yes, I know Felidar's Retreat is cheaper. It does more stuff. It doesn't just put creatures into play. It does one other thing on the line, in one of the lines. I wanted Zendikar Royal because it creates elementals. That's why. Ristic Study because, well, I mean, we have the option to hit blue. Why wouldn't I put a Ristic Study in? Why not annoy people with, you want to pay the 1? And it helps me draw cards. Fayborough Elder, again, one of the cards on the fence. I have more testing to do with it. It's just because it actually, with each color out, just like the, what was it? The card here. One of the cards here. I don't know. Chromatic Orrery. You know, just like that with different colors, permanents out, it adds more color of mana. I'm still playing with it. As I've been using it, it hasn't really done what I was hoping it would do. So, again, it may be making the cutting room floor. Tetiova, I mentioned earlier, just like the AC, it lets me draw a card and gain a life when I play a land. And this deck does nothing but play lands. And again, I know this should have been a landfall deck. My landfall deck is going to be a different deck. I have another deck in mind for a landfall. This just happens to have landfall style effects. Gigantha, also on the cutting room floor, needs more testing. It taps to add 1 of each color, and you cannot use it to pay generic mana cost, which is great when it comes to Golos, because Golos just needs all that color. Alright, the reason why Zendikar Royal is in here is if I have to go a different direction than the land because I got a land taken out or exiled that I needed, you go Omnath, Locus of Rage. He does have a landfall ability, that's not why he's in here. And yes, he will be probably the commander for my Gruul color deck, and that will be a landfall deck. But for this one, I wanted the additional use of, if I had to use creatures, I needed Omnath because he creates 5/5s. So that's why Zendikar Royal came in instead of Felidor's Retreat. Genesis Ultimatum because it helps. I mean, look at what it does. Look at top 5 cards of your library. Put any of the permanent cards onto the battlefield and then the rest into your hand. When you flip over something like this with Golos and you get to cast it for free, you'll see the power. Ruinous Ultimatum because, well, why wouldn't I want to just destroy all things everybody but me controls? And, of course, Teferi's Protection, because you kind of do need a little bit of protection in a deck like this. You have some creatures that are going to be able to come out, but it's not the main focus, and they're not really there to do blocking. You don't want them dying. So, Teferi's Protection, it's only a 1-turn thing, but sometimes you just need it for that 1 turn. And the last part will be the win cons. What I'm going to use besides the Maze's End, and besides the stuff that the creatures that get created from Zendikar Royal and Omnath, Locus of Rage, these are the ways that you're going to be able to win. And this one may come out, but I kind of liked it, and I've been wanting to use it for a while. It's Crackling Perimeter. We have all 10 gates. We actually have 11 gates in here. So tap an untapped gate you control, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So you can actually kill out a board in... Remember, I have ways to untap lands all the time, so you could actually kill a board in 1 pod by the time it comes back to your turn. If you, for some reason, don't have a Maze's End out and you have 10 gates out, let's just go with there. You can actually do on your turn 10, on each of your opponent's 10, so that's 40 right there. So just keep that in mind. It's one of the ways. It may come out if I find a better way, or they come up with some new stuff. You know, every time they print a set, this deck just has cards it can use. Approach the Second Sun, so it helps gain life, so there's always that, and then it can just win the game for no reason. You have to make sure that you're careful with your Golos flips, so when it shuffles itself back in, it doesn't really shuffle. When it gets put the 7th card from the top, you have to time the way that you use Golos correctly to get to it faster, because sometimes you'll flip it by accident, so keep that in mind. You can only do 1 Golos interaction if you're looking for the Approach the Second Sun as your win con, because you play it, it goes 7 under, and then you can activate Golos twice on that turn if you have the mana, and it'll be the top card and it'll be drawn next, and then you can just play it. But you don't want to have to use the Golos ability and it flip on the Golos ability on the second one, or else you won't win, because it says if you played it from your hand. Yeah, so it says if you cast it from your hand, you just got to make sure you have it right. Do your math. And then the last card is actually in here because I thought it would be funny. So aside from Omnath and all the elementals, I figured a 5-color deck deserves not just a general, but a king. So Progenitus, the double of every color mana cost, protection from everything, and if it would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, reveal it, shuffle it into the library, and it goes back in. So in my fishbowl testing, it happened twice now. On the first activation of my Golos, and it's only happened twice, this flipped on the first card. So if you're ramped correctly and you get it out, you can actually cast Golos and use his ability by the 4th turn, maybe sooner, depending on how your hand rolls out. But this is how it happened in the 2 fishbowl tests I did, where he flipped on the first activation on turn 4. I mean, that there in itself, people, you can't deal with that on the 4th turn because you can't touch it. So you just have to hope that you have set up a board state to block it. So, but anyway, so that's my current build. And I say current because these do get updated. I will be doing some updating on this deck as time goes on, just like all of my decks. So this is my current build. It is a lands deck, but it's really a Maze's End lands deck that I wanted to play with Golos. And I've been wanting to build Golos for, you know, a little bit, ever since M20 came out. And I wanted to do a Maze's End deck since, oh god, when was Maze's End? Dragon's Maze was what, 2012 I think it was? So it's been about 9 years or something like that. Maybe it was 2013, but regardless, it's one of those things I've been wanting to build. So I figured I'll go ahead and do it under the guise of Golos because he can actually make the deck work. So anyway, any questions or concerns that you have about the deck or in general, go ahead and go to the Facebook page, or you can send me an email directly. It's bluebearsgames@gmail.com. Any constructive criticism, anything you like or don't like, go ahead and you can put it in the comments below, or send me a message directly through either, again, the Facebook page, or you can email me, whatever have you. I'm always available. I'm always around. Again, I have the MS. I've been disabled for, I believe, since Maze's End came out is when I was diagnosed. So I'm just sitting around doing nothing, having some fun, making decks and all that stuff. So go ahead and give me a shout out. Do me a favor, go ahead and give the video a like if you liked it. If you didn't, please tell me why. I'd love to know. It's one of those things where I take pride in what I do, but if you guys don't like it, you got to tell me why. I will change it. The little video at the beginning of the video, the little skit that I put at the beginning of the video, that's going to be something I do going forward. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you have any ideas for a little skit that I can put at the beginning, go ahead and let me know. And subscribe, please. I am, as of making this video, 268. We're chugging along to 300. Again, my goal is 1,000 at minimum, and we're trying to get there. I'm looking for a sponsor. If anybody wants to sponsor a show, I don't want any money. I actually have another idea I want to do to be sponsored. So if you contact me and you want to sponsor a little show that wants to grow and has more time than sense, send me a message there as well. And that is my video for the week. I will see you guys next week, and until then, please have a good one.